Okay, video 2 of 7 in the Eldar week. It's going to be a little bit more than a week, obviously, with there being 7 videos. It's going to be Fuegan, one of my personal favorites. Fire dragons have always been one of my favorite aesthetics for the Eldar. It's probably the first aspect warrior that I ever bought back in the day. So I'm super excited to paint up Fuegan, and in a couple of days, of course, get the Fire Warriors, how dare I, the Fire Dragons painted up as well. So hopefully you guys are looking forward to the rest of Eldar week and you've enjoyed the first 2 videos that have come out, and I'm very excited to bring the rest to you as we move forward in the week. Before we get into it though, I just want to say a huge thank you to all of my active patrons and everyone out there that supports Mediocre Hobbies in all the myriad of ways it is possible to do so. Of course, becoming a channel member or becoming a patron are the 2 most important ways to keep the channel going. You guys really do keep the lights on and the cameras rolling, so the bottom of my heart, thank you very much for that. If you're interested in checking out for yourself, there's links down in the description below. You get access to a private Discord server. You can talk to me on a daily basis about your awesome hobby, and of course take part in all the different events that we host over there, painting competitions and the like. And you get access to an extra video every single week just for you. For instance, in the 7 videos that we are going to be doing for Eldar, the Azraman video will be exclusive to Patreon and channel members. So if you're interested in checking out how I'm going to paint Azraman in a few days, then you need to check out that Patreon. All right guys, without further ado, let's dive in. We got Fuegan painted up. And this is, of course, Fuegan. He is such a beautiful reimagining of the previous model. I was a big fan of the previous model. Like I said in the intro, Fire Dragons are one of my favorite aspect warriors, if not my favorite. Them and Banshees are definitely, I have a soft spot for. But orange being my favorite color ever, obviously Fire Dragons are going to be up there in my love. I didn't notice how much red was on these miniatures until I actually started to dissect the color scheme and decide what I was going to do, and then realize there's quite a lot of red on it. Now, when I paint orange these days, I love leaning on the Too Thin Coats range of paints. So I will be layering up this model with those paints, but they all have alternate ones from Games Workshop that you can use in their place if you do not have access to or do not want to purchase Too Thin Coats range of paints. That's totally fine. There's a conversion guide which shows you exactly what paints to use in the Games Workshop range to fill this in. But for now, let's just worry about all the base coats and getting the model shaded. We are going to start with the orange contrast paint, which is of course Gryph-hound orange. We're going to apply this to all the armor panels on this miniature that are required to be orange, plus the parts of the banner. I love the beautiful back banners in these models. They're going to make them stand out so much on the battlefield, which is obviously good for us visually, but as for, you know, enemy snipers and stuff, it's probably really enjoying those banners too. Once all the orange is in place, it's time to get the red ready. And for this, it's a really kind of a darker red. So instead of going in for Blood Angels red contrast, I'm going to go in for Flesh Tears red, which is kind of a darker, more maroony color. And we're going to hit that. So all the interior kind of armor panels, like the gauntlets, obviously the head that I kept separate for ease of painting, and some other sections. You're going to have to literally use the models 360 on the website to try and find all those different parts that are supposed to be red and get them done. Of course, the center of the back banner is meant to be red as well, excluding the circle with the dragon symbol on it. We're going to leave that alone for now. But we are going to take our time and make sure we get all the red in the kind of correct places. Of course, his big tabard down the front of him, with loincloth or whatever you want to call it, is also done in red. Yeah, hopefully you guys are excited to see the rest of the videos in the Eldar week. There's just so many beautiful things that I'm just so excited to paint and share with you guys. And hopefully you guys will stick with me for all 7 videos, 6 on the channel and 1 exclusive to Patreon. I think it's going to be a fun couple of videos, and by the end of it I'll have a bunch of new models painted up and added to the collection. Here's the first look at the head. As you can see, I've glued it to a bit of sprue that I've super glued to one of my painting handles for ease of painting, and I'm just throwing the Flesh Tears red contrast all over the helmet, minus the bits in the face that are supposed to be white. So the faceplate of it, where it's like grill and its eye slots and stuff, are supposed to be white. So I'm going to leave it as I sprayed it. I did spray it Chaos Black, and then I sprayed Grayseer over the top of that like I do for most of my painting. I've done a whole video on how to do that if you want to check that out. Obviously going in with the contrast Black Templar now, and now being very careful to pick out some of those other details. So all of the straps, all of the pouches, all those bits and pieces on the model are going to get done in black. There's not too many, to be honest with you. And there's a few tabs running down the side of his thighs, or sorry, his calves, which are supposed to be black as well, holding on his kind of boots. Most of the fire pike is going to be black as well, so you can go in and kind of knock in that color on those bits. All the piping connecting that. The dragon motif on the banner is meant to go black as well. And then of course the pole holding the back banner. And then a huge portion of his big fiery axe as well gets done in that as well. So once again, use the reference pictures online so you know exactly where to put the color. But don't go kind of crazy. It's going to be fine. Ironbreaker was then used to block in the metallic colors on this. Not the gold parts, just really the blade of the axe. That's realistically the only silver that does exist on this model. Eldar are very ostentatious. They love their gold and their finery and their gems. Their gems being soul stones, of course, and, you know, containing the souls of relatives or long lost or dead Eldar, trying to keep their souls away from Slaanesh. Going in with Retributor Armor Gold to try and get the rest of the model blocked in. So all the rest of the details are supposed to be done in gold. It should finish off the kind of base coat of this guy. So obviously around his waist is a lot of details, a huge big Eldar rune on his helmet. Some of the details on the axe, the banner top, all those kind of bits and pieces are going to go in gold and are really going to kind of lock in all those colors. It's going to make it look really nice. It's only really when you get all the kind of base coats on and you get to throw that shade on. Once that shade is dry, you get a kind of a glimpse of what the model is really going to look like, and it's going to be really cool. I'm going to shade the whole thing with Nuln Oil, which is of course very dark, but like I said, I'm going to be leaning on the Too Thin Coats range of paints to highlight this model, which obviously is going to work up through a bunch of different tones to really make the model pop. Which means I want to have my base coats to be nice and dark so that I kind of have room to layer up. If the kind of the lowest point is already quite bright, then it's going to be hard to kind of highlight, if that makes any sense to you guys. Of course, highlighting or shading the helmet as well. And while all of that shading is happening, I am going to sort out the base as well. I've done the base in a million videos. The orange texture paste, some orange contrast over the runes, and then a dry brush of Rise of Rust and a dry brush of Bone. That's all it is. I'll say that again. Orange texture paste. I use the AK interactive one, but you can use Martian Iron Crust or whatever if you want. Then I threw the same orange contrast that I did for the model over the runes. When all of that's fully dry, dry brush Rise of Rust, dry brush Bone, rim the base black. That's it. Base is done. Very simple. Okay, with the model all base coated and washed, it's looking fairly decent. I'm really happy with where it's sitting. And I'm very excited now to try and get to my favorite bit, which is of course kind of layering up the model and making those different tones paste. So Rust Orange, Fanatic Orange, Orange Flare. These are the three orange tones that I'm going to be using step by step to highlight up the orange part. Now, normally we use the contrast orange to substitute the base coat required from the Too Thin Coats. But for some reason with the orange, I do like to put the base coat in as well. So you're basically hitting it with like two mid-tones and then a highlight. It is kind of a little bit more work. It's what I do for my Dogs of War army to get that tone. And I'm so happy with how that orange turns out. I'm willing to put in that little bit of extra effort and put it in. That's also another fun thing about doing Eldar as a project. Like, you can decide to put a lot of effort into Expect Warriors because all you really have to do is a Phoenix Lord and then 5 guys in that scheme, which isn't a huge project. It's not like you're like, okay, I've decided on doing, you know, this armor, this like 6 layers. Oh my God, this is a disaster. I've got to paint 50 Marines like this now, all the same. That's not the case. Eldar really does break apart into a bunch of really nice, small, like achievable projects. I just really enjoy it. Okay, so we've got the first coat of orange blocked in. It's time to move on to the Fanatic Orange. And once again, we're going to be layering the same parts that we did in the previous step. We're just going to go in a little bit more of that. So you're going to leave a little bit of the contrast behind, a little bit of the Rust Orange behind. And now with the Fanatic Orange, we're going to hit the higher points. All those little bumps and bobbles in the armor, make sure to highlight those along the edges and sharp points. So when you get to the banner as well, it's all those kind of raised folds. And then we're just going to be adding some texture to the fabric with kind of scratchy highlights, almost like feathering across it. It is another one of the interesting things about Eldar armor. I don't know what it's made of, but if you look at the lore of Eldar, it's like bone singers create their spaceships and their equipment and stuff like that. So their armor is not like, it's not like Stormtrooper plastic smooth. They're supposed to have a lot of texture to it. It's supposed to be quite rough. And that's what I'm going to be trying to achieve with my paint scheme. I'm going to try and add as much texture as possible, as much like roughness to the scheme as possible to make it really fit into that kind of Eldar like theme that I kind of love so much. Okay, with 2 coats of orange down, it's time for the final highlight of the Too Thin Coats range, which is the Orange Flare. Now, I'm just going to say this once again, just to reiterate, There is a conversion guide for every single paint that I'm using, the Tooth and Coats range, that will translate over to a Citadel and an Army Painter paint. So if you want to choose to substitute the colors I'm using for those, if you like those range of paints more, you already have access to those range of paints, then do that. You should achieve a very similar result. I am just quite a good fan of the Tooth and Coats range. I just want to use it as much as possible, especially when I'm doing something like orange. Okay, so as I go in with this final step, you can see that I'm using a very fine tipped brush, and I'm going to be very careful with my highlights. I'm just going for the very kind of fine highlights bits, and we're going to go extra scratchy on some of the details. We're not trying to, cover. So here you go, even with the banner, you can see I'm just going in with the edge. Very scratchy, liney highlight. Just add that kind of pop of color just to make the orange really stand out. I was really pleased with it. I'm really liking how the red turns out as well when I start getting stuck in with that. Basically, by the end of this project, I'm really proud of how Fuegan turned out. I'm 2 Phoenix Lords into the Eldar week, the 7 video stretch, and I'm just really enjoying them. So hopefully you guys will follow along with all of them and enjoy them with me. Okay, here's the orange all finished up and ready to go. I love it. So here we go. Berserker Red, Sanguine Red, and Demon Red. These are the 3 colors we're going to go in for the Tooth and Coats range. And all the red parts of this model. Like I said, it's really hard to honestly to video doing the red. Obviously the tabard is easy and the back banner is easy, but all the other red bits are really kind of sunk down into the armor panels. And it's kind of hard to get it focused in and show you the kind of brush strokes, but it's very much segmented armor plates. So it's really simple to just kind of do the step down approach and highlight that as you go. As we get into the helmet, as you can see, I'm choosing a direction, pulling the brush away from the kind of core of it and feathering that out. I'm going to obviously flip the model over and do the same thing, and then paint the core bit of the helmet, the middle bit with the face, in the same kind of technique. So that means that with the edges where the center of the mask meets those kind of big fins will stay the darkest when it comes to the highlight. And I think that will add a really nice effect and make the helmet really look nice. Okay, so we are of course now going to move over to the second color, which is Sanguine Scarlet. We've done the Berserker Red already. Sanguine Scarlet's the next one. We're going to go in, and just like the orange, we are going in this as this like a second mid-tone, if you. I know it's a bit weird the way we're doing it, but the results I think will speak for themselves. We're going to highlight in, leaving a little bit of the Berserker Red behind, and then adding in some nice broad strokes on things like the tabard and the back banner. But then when it comes to all that segmented plate and armor, we're going to be trying to add that texture, adding all those scratchy details. You can see me going down like kind of like the step. So leaving the kind of corner bits as dark as possible, and then the big flat bits before we drop the next kind of set of armor and step down and so on and so forth. Like I said, it's hard to film. It's such small details. This model did take me a little bit longer than I expected to paint. I think also I was having fun with it and just enjoying the process. But obviously it's a Phoenix Lord. This is probably the only time I ever paint a Fuegan Phoenix Lord, unless someone decides to do ask me to commission paint one for them. Then I'll have to paint another one, obviously. But, it's not like a squad. It's not like I might paint this again and again and again if I want more squads or more models. Usually when you do a nice character, you only ever get to paint them once. So spending that little bit of extra time and really enjoying yourself, I think, is important to remember. Okay, you can see what I mean here, where I left the bit next to the center as the darkest bit. And now I'm going to feather out again, but obviously leaving as much behind, a little bit less kind of in as the previous coat, if that makes any sense. We're going to just leave a little bit of the previous color behind and then sweep out and make the big fins kind of bright, as really nice and bright. Obviously it's going to be a real focal point of the model, the big beautiful red helmet. And as you can see, when I go into the core, I'm being super careful and then trying to add a little bit of that texture in around all of that gold Eldar runic detail. And then we're going to go in again with the final color, which is of course the Demon Red. This is quite a jump in color, so we are only going to be using it sparingly. Even on the tabard here, you can see that I am not going in with big broad strokes. You can see that I'm kind of stippling, giving like that mottled effect, just to add that texture. I'm not trying to overpower any of the previous colors. I just want this to act as a simple final highlight to the red. And we're gonna play that exactly the same across all the red across his model, all those armor panels, and then of course his back banner, that core of it, keeping that nice and red. The helmet is of course the focal point, and that's the bit we're gonna spend the most time with the red, really taking our time. Like I said, this is going to be the last few touches of red that this piece is going to get, which means you really want it to stand out and you really want it to look nice. Following those contours of the helmet, and once again in around all of those Eldar runes, making sure you don't hit them with the red, but giving them space, letting around them stay nice and dark. You don't have to get really close in with the highlights, like against the edges of the gold. You can leave them slightly darker. It'll make the gold pop out a little bit more, especially when you finish highlighting them. And I suppose here's the best example I was talking about of leaving like that core bit out to the fins dark and then kind of pulling that brighter red out to the edges and to the top. Will make that helmet pop significantly. Here is a close-up idea of how the helmet turned out. I was really happy with how it did. Obviously do the gold and highlight the white, but here's the red and what I meant when I was talking about all that highlighting. May have sounded like a lot of nonsense, but hopefully you like the result. And here is the red and the orange highlighted and ready to go in Fuegan. We only have a few bits and pieces left. We are of course going to delve into the black section. So obviously the fire pike, all of the kind of strap work, all the pouches, the cabling, and then of course that awesome dragon motif in the center of the banner as well is going to get hit with the black. But what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to go in for the Death Reaper and Dungeon Stone Grey. So here's an example of I'm letting the black contrast and the Null Oil be the base coat, and then we're going to go straight into the mid-tone Death Reaper and then into the highlight Dungeon Stone Grey. I'm going to very quickly highlight all those bits of black across the whole model with those 2 steps. Only going to take a small amount of time. It's not a huge kind of crazy standout detail in the model. Just try your best to get a nice neat coat. Don't hit the orange, don't hit the red, and I think it'll work out really nicely. And with all those black bits ready to go, we're of course going to jump up to the kind of white details. We're not going to go pure white. We're going to use Ivory Tusk and Trooper White from the Two Thin Coats range. There is an even kind of whiter tone, but I don't want to go that white with it. I think that will sit wrong next to the, like I said, the textured orange and the textured red that we've already applied to this model. So like I said, Ivory Tusk for those nice big kind of ribbons and stuff hanging off the front. And then around the like little circle moon motif on the banner, we're going to hit with these colors as well. And then of course we are going to be very careful, take our time and highlight the center of the face on the helmet as well. This requires the most kind of finesse, the most being careful, because we finished off the red already. Like if you think about it, there's 4 layers of paint for the red, not including the sprays. So we don't want to make a mistake and have to try and kind of touch it up and blend that back in. So really just take a deep breath. Take your time. You can see that I'm bracing my fingers against each other so my hands don't shake, and give it a quick highlight. Then we're going to go in with Trooper White and do exactly the same step again, but like I said before, we're just going to go a little bit less. We don't want to go crazy. This is just for the very edges of those parts. And like I said, I really like the way the tones all work together. That red, orange and off-white really do sit together really nicely. And gives us a really nice... It's a really nice extra pop of color, which I think is important for a model like this. Okay, with that done, it's time to move over to Ironbreaker. And with this, we are going to highlight all the metallics across this model. So all the gold, all the silver, everything is going to get that little touch highlight. Once again, adding texture to the metallics. We're not using like brush strokes, if you will. We are just, like I think, stabbing them all, the paintbrush at those sections, catching the sharp edges and, you know, corners and somewhere where the light might reflect. Nothing crazy. Now, we could spend a lot of time doing the kind of soul stones that exist across the model. I did them in a recent high elf video on the channel. I showed you how to paint the gemstones properly. But as I can say, I'm not going to go crazy with them. I'm going to obviously hit those gemstones with that Ironbreaker. I'm going to get a nice smooth coat across the gemstone, or where it's supposed to be the soul stone. And then I'm just going to add Talazar blue contrast to those sections. I'm going to paint over top of those gems with that, well, the center, leave the like nice kind of gold trim around the edges. I think this looks really good. It's very simple, very quick technique that I really enjoy. I'm happy enough to leave them like that. If you want to push it forward and you want to learn how to paint gemstones, do check out the painting the Phoenix Guard model for the high elf range that I did a couple days ago, and that will give you a step-by-step guide on how to actually paint gemstones properly. It's up to you how much effort you want to put in. Okay, so I've now broken the helmet off its temporary stand. I've used my knife to clean up the kind of glue stains and get the model ready. I've dry fitted it, so it's now time to glue it into place and finally see what the model will look like with it all in place, finally as one piece. I've been looking forward to this for quite a number of hours painting. And it does not disappoint. It really does help break up the amount of orange, especially with the orange base that I've used for my Eldar. And as a final result, I think it looks great. I'm really, really pleased with Fuegan. I'm super excited to get the fire dragons alongside him all painted up and all matching together. Hopefully you guys like this. I know it was a little bit of a longer video than normal. That's because I did use the 2 thin coats range and I went to a little bit more effort with the layering stage. Please do let me know your opinions on that. Don't think I'll be leaning on the 2 thin coats range for any more of the Eldar videos. It's just because I like the orange so much from that range that I decided to go for it today. But yeah, I would love to know what your thoughts are. Do you like me using these paints? Do you wish I just stick to Games Workshop paints like I normally do? It's totally up to you. Of course, a couple of still images to give you guys an example of what this guy will look like on the tabletop. And of course, with the video 1 from the Eldar range model, the Warp Spider Phoenix Lord sat there next to him looking well. I think this project is well and truly on its way. Okay guys, and there we have it. Hopefully you enjoyed that video. If you did, make sure to give the video a like, make sure you ask any questions in the comments, and make sure you subscribe. Those 3 things really do make a huge difference to all creators as to how many people get to see our videos and how quickly our channels grow. So please do that. It costs you absolutely nothing except 2 seconds out of your day. Thank you guys so much for sticking around at the end of this video. Let me know if you want to see the next video in this series to be, and I'll see you in the next one.